All of a sudden, this is starting to take shape a little bit.
A little bit, yeah.
I think we're going to play some stuff for you here in a little bit from Stephen A. Smith reacting to the Klay Thompson visit with Draymond Green on the pod. And listen, you and I know this. I think everybody in 2024 should think about these things when you're hearing celebrities speak on a platform. When you wonder, when Draymond Green says, and they did this, building up Klay Thompson and his appearance on the Draymond pod, Draymond was like, I've been asking him for months. I've been asking him, I can't get, you'd think I'd be able to just get Klay on the pod whenever I have not been able to get him. Well, at long last, here it is, I got Klay on the pod. Well, why do you think that Klay has not been on the pod? Because what, Draymond hadn't run into him yet?
Right.
Or do you think maybe there's a reason, which is that at most points this year, same reason why we've had a hard time getting Michael to say yes. At most points this year, those who speak about Klay Thompson do not want to talk publicly for a variety of reasons. And so I wonder if that had a lot to do with it.
Right. I'm sure Klay didn't want to talk about how's the year going and what are you doing next year?
How's your mental health, Klay?
Seriously. How's the knee? How's the Achilles?
Right.
How's it going? How's that search for more shots? How's the three ball? Things weren't necessarily great for Klay. And I was just after the Michael Thompson interview looking at some of his splits, and the first 2 months of the year were not great for Klay.
No.
And since then, he's been much, much better. But I'm looking right now, he is 14th from the bottom in the association in field goal percentage. He's shooting 43% for the year from the floor. He's ahead of James Harden, Trae Young, Damian Lillard, and Jordan Poole, among others.
Oh, God.
Jordan Poole's ahead of only 3 players.
Glad you're ahead of Jordan. That's good. Okay. I mean, think about the cadence. So we start the year, he's not playing well, right? Then we get a tweet from Shams that the Warriors offered Klay 2 and 48, and that did not sit well with Klay. Then what do we get? We get a month of talking about how Klay should go to the bench. Klay looks at Tim Kawakami. You gonna bench me? Then what happens? He does. He goes to the bench. He handles it well. He gets back into the starting lineup. He starts to go on a run. Here in the month of April, he's averaging almost 23 points a game. Poof. Suddenly he's got time to talk.
Yeah.
Fascinating, right? Now you're averaging 23 a game this month. You're playing the Lakers tonight. This could be the final 4 games of your regular season Warriors career. It is, let's just call it Vegas odds terms, likely that the Warriors are going to be done playing pretty soon. And then you're a free agent. So what does all of that mean? And then Michael Thompson, who on October 24th tweeted, Klay isn't going anywhere, he's a dub, then joins us earlier today. And when we asked him about free agency, this is the way Michael wanted to answer it.
I don't already talk to Klay about that because I don't want to put that kind of burden on him or pressure on him or bug him about it. I'm sure he thought about it enough, so he doesn't need to hear that from me. I just wanted to have fun today, be in the present, and not worry about it. Just think about the game tonight to try to help get his team into the real playoffs, out of the play-in. So, no, we don't talk about that. I keep that business stuff, that side away from the family.
Okay, so Michael doesn't talk to Klay about business, and Klay to Draymond said this about free agency.
I just can't believe it's here. Like, in your mid-20s, it's so crazy. You think you're going to play forever, really, and you think you just maintain that athletic level that seems effortless. Oh, but then as time goes on, you really do realize how demanding this job really is. And it's so physically demanding. I was actually struggling with that a lot at the beginning of this year because of the unknown, you know? I mean, I might have let contract situations or playing time or just making up a lot of excuses rather than just appreciating what is in front of me. And it took me and Steve like 4 real heart-to-heart talks to finally break my shell, being like, you know what? I got to have fun this year. I deserve to have fun. Like, we worked so hard to freaking win these games and play into June and have fans on the road. I mean, my first couple years, there might be a few Steph Curry jerseys in the crowd. Now it's like a whole contingent of Warrior fans on the road. It's insane.
Okay. So there's Klay. There's Klay's dad. Stephen A. Smith, after listening to the podcast, said this.
It's an indication that the end is near, and they know it. Now, you know me, and, this is what I do for a living. So, Shannon, it's no secret that I know quite a few owners in the league.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And quite a few executives in the league. I ain't guessing. I'm telling you right now that regardless of the fact that they're going to make the play-in, you ain't spending that money if you Joe Lacob and Peter Guber and stuff like that to be in the play-in. You do get to a point where it's like, would you love to keep these guys together? Sure. But will the money work?
Right.
That's the question mark. Steph Curry ain't going nowhere. I don't give a damn how much money he wanted or whatever. He got 3 years left. Dre is locked up. You've got him for 4 years, 3 years after this one, okay? And he's locked in at that $100 million deal. Klay is the wild card because Klay may want to stay in Golden State, but in the same breath, he's going to feel the need to be appreciated. And if the money isn't right, which it's entirely plausible that may be the case, then they may have to move in a different direction. And so I got that from listening to them yesterday a little bit and hearing what Klay was saying and why. It's almost like you reminiscing. You guys would know this better than me. You know when a guy speaks in a certain kind of way like that, it's like paying homage to each other and what you've accomplished. You do that when you feel that the end is near.
I love the dramatic ending from Stephen A. right there. The end is near.
That's a good pause.
It's a great pause.
It's a great pause.
He commands the microphone.
Sure he does.
He's not necessarily wrong. And the way you laid out the arc of the year, going back to October, and his dad saying he's going to be a Dubs. And then I just looked it up to make sure the date was right. It was December 13th when it was reported that he was offered 2 years and 48 and he turned it down. And at that moment, Klay was shooting 39.7 from the field and 34.3 from three, averaging 15.4 a game. So I don't know if the team made the offer that day. That's when it got reported. But at that time, 22 games in, Klay was not playing very well. And so the team offers him 2 and 48 based on the way he was playing at that moment. And Klay, I'm sure, was frustrated by the contract, frustrated with how he was playing. And now you skip ahead almost 4 months later. He's playing better. The team's playing better. But maybe his feelings are still hurt from that offer back in December.
And that does happen to guys.
Of course.
I mean, one of the most fascinating time I've ever seen it happen was when Madison Bumgarner left in free agency. And everyone's like, oh, gosh, Farhan didn't offer him a contract. And Madison was like, so in essence, I didn't want to be a Giant anymore because of stuff that they said to me 7 years ago. He was mad at the previous regime.
Right.
And it's like, yeah, this stuff sticks with guys. Big time. Long time. Absolutely. Gilbert Arenas built his whole career as a second-round draft pick. I thought that was hilarious. He's like, I wanted to get back at every single team who passed on me, which was all of them.
Right.
Including the one that ended up picking me. I'm like, man, you're crazy. But that happens. And could that be happening here, especially for an overthinker like Klay Thompson? And I don't want to brand him as that, actually. Let me take that word back. But he is somebody who is very, he is in his own head a little bit. He's in there a lot. He's admitted that. So I don't want to make it sound like it's a bad thing.
No.
It just is what it is. He is in there more than some other players. And so I think it's, as Stephen A. says, very plausible that it goes that way. And we are sort of in a pickle. If you're a Klay fan and a Warrior fan and a Big Three fan and all that stuff, and I think Lacob is and I think Klay is,
right.
Like I do think everybody's perfect world scenario is the same, except for one thing. Like Klay wants to be a Warrior. The Warriors want Klay to be a Warrior, but the money has got to add up. And if that's going to bother Klay, then yeah, it does not take a genius to see it going a different direction.
If you think about the priorities for Joe Lacob, and you can put them in whatever order you want, there's winning a championship, there's getting underneath the luxury tax threshold, there's keeping Steph, Klay, and Dre together, there's selling out the building in perpetuity, There's keeping Steve Kerr for as long as you possibly can. You think about all the things that Joe Lacob is trying to balance, and as you start to order them, I wonder if the need to get under the tax is more important than keeping the big three together. In other words, if Klay turned down $2 and $48, and Klay wants $30 million a year, and Joe Lacob and company, they look at that number and say, geez, we can't pay you $30 million a year unless we want to get back into the luxury tax. And from every interview I've heard Joe Lacob give, he mentions getting under the tax every single time.
Right.
And I know this year he said, we're not doing $400 million, and turns out you're doing $400 million. And even that, so he did that against his own better judgment. And what did he get for it? You're fighting for the 10 seed. Fool me one time, shame on you, can't get fooled again. So I think that he looks at it now and thinks, well, this time for sure I'm not going over the tax. So maybe 24 a year is all they can afford to pay Klay. And if that's the case, and Klay feels disrespected by that number, then maybe he will go elsewhere. And you're right, Mark, just hearing his dad, Michael, today, you played the Stephen A., the Klay, and the fact that, yeah, he and Draymond just now do the pod with 10 days left in the regular season.
Why now?
Right. It definitely indicates that maybe it's a thanks for the memories kind of appearance. I'm not saying that he's gone for sure, but the way you're starting to line things up for me,
I mean,
it's making some sense.
There's a very, very real chance that, hey, Klay, you better do it this week because there might not be any more weeks.
Yeah.
You're not going to do it in the offseason. We might be on different teams in October. I mean, 43 and 35.
$400 million.
You love to say you are what your record says you are. And in this particular case, you're right. When you're talking about salary, I mean, yeah, Joe Lacob is not someone who I think he acknowledges the emotional side of things without getting tripped up by them. So he is well aware of the emotional standing of these three players within the franchise and the community. At the same time, do you think that he lets that guide his decisions more so than his responsibility to the shareholders and beyond? I would answer a hard no. Joe Lacob strikes me as someone who is absolutely willing to make a very, very difficult decision and drive a bargain and draw a line in the sand. My team, and this is how we're doing it. And if it doesn't fit, then we'll do something else.
Right. And, if that happens, no one will ever wear number 11 again in the Golden State Warriors history. The number will be retired, and whether or not he gets further accolades or not, he's going to the Hall of Fame, as his dad told us, Michael, when we had him on last hour. And the sad reality, and Klay kind of spoke to this in the Draymond pod, is everything comes to an end. And for Klay, he's coming to terms with the reality that he's not the same player he was. He'll never be the same player again. That's just Father Time tapping everybody on the shoulder. And if that's the way this has to end, it's not ideal if you wind up going 45 and 37 and you bow out in the play-in and that's it. And Klay goes on to Charlotte or Toronto or Orlando is where everybody wants to send him of late.
Well, they got money, they need shooters. There's an intuitive side to that idea.
He gets a 3-year, $90 million deal with a third-year mutual option with a partial buyout. Then on you go, Klay. And best of luck to you. We're going to miss you.
And you do what veterans often do, which is you join up with younger players who are on their way up and see if you can get another run out of this thing.
Right.
I mean,
and honestly, the way Klay projects for his last 2 to 4 years as an NBA player is much more of a Kyle Korver or a JJ Redick, a guy who you just want running around the line shooting threes.
If he's just standing there in the corner, if he's one of those players, if he becomes PJ Tucker, my God, he'd be lethal. Lethal. If you're asking him to do a bunch less, which that's my dream for the Warriors. I want all three to stay and be asked to do less. Steph needs to be able to take half of the fourth quarter off without Steve Kerr getting ripped. And Klay is not going to be asked to be a two-way star anymore and score off the dribble. And Draymond is not going to be asked to be the only voice in the room, the guider of all of the young players. There are other voices that will come in. Some maybe are already there. We're told that Podziemski has got leadership qualities. We see that Jonathan Kuminga can absolutely be a 20-point-per-night guy in the NBA. These guys have got to have their roles grow, and the older guys have their roles diminish.
Yeah.
But fitting that all in financially, not easy. One more from Stephen A. Smith with regard to Klay Thompson and possibly the end.
I'm looking at Klay Thompson, and the number one thing I peel from it, Shay, is that I think that when you look at Klay Thompson, this is his way of saying goodbye, preparing himself for the end in Golden State. Let me assure you, there's at least 20, 25 teams that should want Klay Thompson. And let me raise my hand. Those New York Knicks should be one of them. Those New York Knicks should be one of them. Let me tell you something right now. Let me tell you something. You want to see, I'm talking about Klay Thompson, who has struggled with consistency this year.
Right.
You get me Klay Thompson in New York City. He ain't going to want to, because if he ain't in Golden State, probably want to be in L.A. Can't blame the Southern California sunshine, all that stuff. You understand? But let me tell you something. If Klay Thompson were in a New York Knicks uniform, I would throw a house party.
Look, my mind sort of goes past all the theatrics of Stephen A. Smith to back to what he said at the beginning of the first clip that we said, or that we played for you. Stephen A. knows people. Stephen A., though he is such a performer, also does not talk out of his you-know-what. He is speaking to people at a very high level, and when you hear, I want you to take that one thing that he said above some of the other things that he said. He said a few important things, but there's one thing that you can take to your office tomorrow or your party this weekend, whenever Klay Thompson comes up. Gosh, I just can't. How many teams? Who's gonna offer Klay 3-90? Everybody.
Yeah. Everybody that has that room.
Because in today's NBA, that's a phenomenal deal. He is 34 years old and can sit on the side of the court and hit threes for you all day long. If you just want Klay to tuck in at $30 million and be your third or fourth best player, everybody wants that. Everybody does.
Yeah.
So please dismiss your friend who says, no, who's going to want Klay at 34? That's your emotions talking. That's your Warrior fandom talking when you know, gosh, this guy's not who he used to be. It's just like the way that the Warrior fan base wrapped its arms around Andrew Wiggins. Why? Minnesota fans sat there and go, who the hell is going to want this no-dog, underperforming number one overall pick? Oh, we do. We would like him to be our fourth best player, and we are thrilled with him and the ring that we got. So, Warrior fans, they're all going to want Klay because he can still play. And $30 million in the NBA is nothing. It's nothing.
Do you know how many guys in the NBA make at least $30 million this year?
Oof.
Grandy, if you would, please. Game show music. It's time to play. Who makes $30 million? There are.
You want specifics or you want a number of guys?
I just want the number of guys. And I'll give you, plus or minus 2 guys. How many players in the association make at least $30 million this year?
I bet the number is somewhere in the neighborhood of 50. So I'll you want something plus or minus 2? Just for fun, because I love Kyle Shanahan and Brock Purdy so much, I'll say 49.
I'm sorry. It was a great guess, though. The answer is 44.
Wow.
44 players make at least 30. Dama Sabonis makes 30.6. Then you go up to Chris Paul. Gordon Hayward's making 31.5. Are you telling me that Klay Thompson can't be as impactful as Gordon Hayward, And there are more players on the list who you would scoff at that they're making that much.
Right, and then there are players who aren't, because now I'm going to pull it up. There are players who are not on the list who you'd argue
and they will
should be. Right, they will be, right? Like Julius Randle only makes 28. Would you rather have him or Klay Thompson right now?
Yeah, Randle's been hurt.
He's been hurt, but you know what I'm saying.
Totally.
You're right. There's guys that are on the way up. Jalen Brunson would have been a better example. He's only making 26.
Right.
So that's a star.
And next year, that number of players making 30+ will go up.
Right.
As well. And so when you look at Klay and the player that he's going to be, this year he's averaging 14.7 attempts per game from the floor. 8.9 of those are threes, Mark. He's only shooting 5.5 twos per game, which is far and away the lowest of his career. So if you're a team who's looking for a knockdown shooter, Klay Thompson at $30 million a year to come in and pump, shoot 12 threes a game and try to light it up off the bench. Perfect role.
You know who's bad for these negotiations is a guy who goes by the name of Jordan Poole.
Good call.
Plays the exact same position. Why would Klay's agent not be like, you don't think he's better than that guy? I know he's better than that guy. That guy's got the worst efficiency in the entire league. And he makes $28 million. So, Joe, let's start the negotiations right there and go up. Because we know he's better than that. So, yeah, this is going to be tough.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be tough unless Klay doesn't feel disrespected and is willing to take a significant haircut just to stick around with his buddies.
Well, and I'm not 100% sure he's going to get 30, but he's going to get more than 24.
Right.
I can promise you that. And if that was the offer from the Warriors at the beginning of the year, whether they like it or not, his standing on the market as we get into the final week of the season is definitely north of that. 2 years and 48. It's not even just that it's only 24 a year, it's only 2 years. Klay can get more than that. He's 34 years old. Somebody would happily give him 3 or 4 years at between 25 to 30 million.
Yeah.
For sure.
At least, 2 years for sure
3.
with a third year, maybe mutual option with a partial buyout, depending on which team and how badly they want the shooter.
We're presented by Fremont Bank, full service banking, no compromises. Again, on October 24th of 2023, Michael Thompson tweets, Klay isn't going anywhere. He's a dub. On April 9th, 2024.
I don't really talk to Klay about that because I don't want to put that kind of burden on him or pressure on him or bug him about it. I'm sure he thought about it enough, so he doesn't need to hear that from me. I just want him to have fun today, be in the present, and not worry about it. Just think about the game tonight to try to help get his team into the real playoffs, out of the play-in. So, no, we don't talk about that. I keep that business stuff, that side away from the family.
I don't know, man. If I was in debate class, I feel like a case is being built today that's pretty hard to fight against. I don't know that Klay is not going to be a Warrior anymore. And I do firmly believe that Klay would like to stay a Warrior, and I think the Warriors would like Klay to stay too.
It's just not that easy.
The puzzle pieces just feel like they don't fit.
Right. It's feeling more and more like, at the very least, he's open to catching other offers. And if those other offers are significantly higher and he feels more respect by another organization, maybe then he does try and